Today we're going to crack open a real-world case file. It's a story all about negligence, really sensitive data, and a huge legal ruling that basically changed the game for how companies think about our privacy. This isn't some made-up story. It's the true account of how 500,000 medical records were found just abandoned behind a pharmacy. So yeah, let's get into it.
But before we get to all the evidence, let's just pause for a second. Think about your own medical file for a minute. It's got some of the most private information about your life in there, right? Stuff you absolutely trust your doctor or pharmacist to keep locked down and secure. Now, just imagine all of that. Every last bit was just left outside for literally anyone to find. So this is the number at the very heart of our story today. 500,000. It's a pretty staggering figure, kind of hard to even wrap your head around. But what is it? What does it represent? Well, this number, this is the key piece of evidence that kicked off a massive investigation.
Yep, that's right. Around 500,000 individual documents, all stuffed with patient information, were discovered just sitting in unlocked containers. And they were just behind the building of a London pharmacy called Doorstep Dispensaree Ltd. They weren't in some secure vault, not even in a locked filing cabinet. They were basically just left out in the open.
Okay, so what was actually in these documents? To really get how serious this breach was, we need to dig into the evidence and see exactly what kind of information was put at risk. And honestly, the answer is pretty shocking.
And the data that was exposed was just incredibly sensitive. We're talking about the complete picture of who someone is and their health. You've got names, home addresses, dates of birth. Those are the basic building blocks for identity theft right there. But then you add in a unique NHS number, super private medical information, and specific prescriptions, and you've got a recipe for absolute disaster. This isn't just one piece of the puzzle, it's a whole profile that could be used for fraud or even blackmail.
Now, in the eyes of the law, this kind of info isn't just treated like any old personal data. Nope, it has a very specific legal name that gives it a much, much higher level of protection. It's known as special category data, and if you handle it, you've got a much bigger responsibility on your shoulders.
So, to put it simply, special category data is the stuff that's most personal to us. You know, the kind of information that could be used to discriminate against someone or cause serious harm if it got out. Health data is probably the best example, and the law totally recognizes how sensitive it is. It demands this data be treated with the absolute highest level of care, way beyond just standard security.
So, with this highly sensitive data just left in an insecure place, this wasn't just bad practice, it was a straight-up violation of the law. Let's take a look at the specific legal rules that were completely ignored here.
This is the big one. It's the fundamental rule. There's a core principle in the GDPR called integrity and confidentiality. It clearly says that personal data must be handled in a way that keeps it secure. That means you have to take real, concrete steps to protect it. So, leaving 500,000 documents outside, exposed to the weather and anyone who walks by, well, that's about as clear a violation of that rule as you could possibly get.
This quote from Steve Eckersley, he was the head of investigations at the Information Commissioner's Office, or ICO, it just gets right to the point. Notice that word he uses, careless. This wasn't some complex cyber attack, right? It was just a basic failure of responsibility. And he makes another great point. It didn't just break the law, it broke the public's trust.
This slide really puts that failure into sharp contrast. Over on the left, you see what the law and, frankly, common sense demands. Secure, locked storage, protection from things like rain, and making sure only authorized people can get to it. And then on the right, you see the shocking reality of this case. Unlocked containers, water-damaged papers, and a spot that was open to anyone who happened to be walking by. It's just a complete and total breakdown of every basic security principle.
So after the discovery and the whole investigation, it was time for a judgment. The ICO, which is the UK's data protection watchdog, had to decide what the consequences would be for this massive failure. And their decision was going to set a major precedent. The process here was very step-by-step. It all kicked off when another regulatory group, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, found the documents during a totally separate inquiry and tipped off the ICO. From there, the ICO gathered their evidence, did their investigation, and then reached their verdict. Doorstep Dispensaree had broken GDPR. The final step was enforcement, deciding on the punishment.
And this was it. This was the penalty, a fine of £275,000. Now, this was not just a slap on the wrist. This was a significant amount of money, designed to show how serious the data breach was and how many people were affected by it.
And this fine connects directly back to that one core failure. It's a clear financial consequence for completely neglecting the duty to protect patient information. It sent a message that this kind of carelessness has a very, very real cost.
But the ICO's actions didn't just stop with the fine. They also hit them with an enforcement notice, which is a legally binding order. Doorstep Dispensaree was told they had to completely overhaul their data protection systems to get them up to the legal standard, and they only had 3 months to do it. This shows that the goal wasn't just punishment. It was about forcing real change to protect people down the line.
So, why are we looking back at this specific case? Well, because its impact goes way beyond just one pharmacy in London. This verdict became a true landmark moment in the history of data protection in the UK.
The timing here is actually fascinating. So the abandoned documents went as far back as 2016, but the GDPR law only came into effect in May of 2018. The ICO was really clear that its fine only applied to the violations that happened after that date. It just goes to show how much the arrival of that law changed everything.
And this is the headline. The big takeaway. This wasn't just a fine. It was the very first monetary penalty handed out by the ICO under that powerful brand new GDPR framework. And because it was the first, it was always going to be a benchmark, something that would set the tone for all the enforcement that came after.
So ultimately, the ICO used this case to draw a line in the sand. The message to every single company, every hospital, every organization in the country that handles our data was completely clear. Data protection is a legal requirement. It is not optional. And if you fail to do it, there will be serious consequences.
This whole case was about paper documents left in a yard, but the principle applies everywhere, to every single piece of data, digital and physical, that organizations hold about us. And that leaves us with one final, pretty important question to think about. How can you really be sure that your most sensitive information is truly being kept secure?